and the court has postponed the hearing for closing arguments in the highly charged and contentious court case involving Mamelodi Sundowns and coach Pitso Mosimane and his agent, wife Moira Tlhagale. Our proceedings continued at the Johannesburg High Court on Monday and Tuesday this week, with further details emerging around the circumstances surrounding the dispute. Tlhagale is the wife of former Mamelodi Sundowns coach and is currently engaged in a bitter legal battle over the club's demand for reimbursement of agents' fees. Sundowns want the agent to refund the commission earned from the negotiation of the contract, arguing that Mosimane was guilty of breach of contract when he left Mamelodi Sundowns for Egyptian giants Al-Ahly in 2020. Central to the Sundowns lawsuit is clause 6.5 in Mosimane's contract, which stipulates that MT Sports must refund part of the agency's fees if the coach exits before his contract ends. While Sundowns have demanded a portion of the 8.6 million rand agency fees on a pro rata basis, Tlhagale argues that the inclusion of the clause is discriminatory, saying that she's being treated differently because she's black, she's a female, and she's Pitso Mosimane's wife. Well, it's quite a lot to unpack, but joining us to unpack the legal issues in this matter is sports lawyer and intermediary Kabelo Mashego. Kabelo, thank you so much for making time for us here on the AM Report. Perhaps a good place to start is, if you're looking at that clause 8.6, what we commonly refer to as a clawback clause, is it supposed to be something that is standardized across the board, or can it vary from person to person, as is in this case, which is the argument that's being made that, well, if it's different from the others, I'm being discriminated against?
Thank you. Morning, Andy, and morning to all the viewers. This infamous clause 6.5 is essentially a clause that can be added to any contract. I mean, these kind of issues are negotiation-based. And in terms of our laws, we are free to negotiate and enter into any agreement as long as it does not go against public policy. So a clause like a clawback clause in relation to these kind of issues is quite normal. If you negotiate it in, you can have it in. If you negotiate it out, you can have it out. In some instances, you can find that with such high amounts, it is incumbent upon the club to have such a clause in the event that the coach in this particular matter leaves early. Some of these clauses would include having a payment plan as opposed to one lump sum payment being paid in the beginning of the contract. It can be paid over some time. And I've heard that in these proceedings, reference was made to Mr. Kapushnik's contracts, which deal in that specific matter, in that payments are made through a payment plan. And then Mr. Makab's contract was also referred to, which required full payment from the start. So these are just negotiation points. I don't think it has anything to do with discrimination or the like.
But in what instances then would you have a situation where there's that varying difference in the contracts? Because we saw Mangoba Mngiti and Rulani Mukwena's contracts, the ones that you're referring to, do not have that clause, and they were assistant coaches to Pitso Mosimane at the time. So in which circumstances would you have then his contract being different, and what would inform that clause being inserted in that instance?
Okay. Like I said, at the end of the day, you have your lawyer, someone else has their own lawyer. The way I negotiate and the way another person negotiates can never be the same. As much as this is an employment-related contract, and therefore I'm required to obtain a commission from it, which the club is saying they're going to pay, how it's paid, the terms of that is something that I negotiate with the club. We put it in paper, and then we sign it. Another agent might come the following day and find that, you know what, I don't want the payments to be made in one lump sum. I want them to be paid periodically at the end of each season. Whatever the case might be, it's just a negotiation point. It's not an issue of these are standard contracts, this is a standard clause, this clause must be in this contract for it to be valid. There's no such thing in this particular instance.
So are you then saying that perhaps there's no case for Moira Tlhagale to make, or what other arguments could she advance forward to perhaps make her case stronger? If you're looking at what has come out of the court, for instance, bargaining power, which she says she wasn't in a position to bargain, unlike the other two agents, because she's just seen as an accessory, as the wife, and not as an agent, which is what she's really fighting against.
Look, I don't really find any merit in that sort of argument. At the end of the day, it's the client who decided to choose this particular agent for whatever reason. If that agent was not in a position to negotiate properly that specific contract, then it's the client who got the short end of the stick in this particular matter. But as we stand right now, there is a clawback clause which requires that should the contract not be concluded to the end, whichever portion that is left out, calculated in a pro rata basis, must be paid back. In terms of our law and in applying common law, there's an important principle which is pacta sunt servanda, which simply means that parties are free to enter into any agreement, and parties are free to enter into an agreement with anyone. Outside of clauses that would be against public policy, these kind of things are there. At the end of the day, there is a contract. Sundowns complied with that specific contract. In this particular case, the terms of that contract were not fulfilled by the agent in that the client did not stay for the duration. Therefore, in terms of the contract, they must pay back that money.
Now,
and that is just my point of view on the issue.
Yeah, and the other question would be, now that we are at this point, should the negotiations not have happened at the initiation stage of the contract? Because as the agent, you're able to negotiate terms, and if you're not happy with that clause, why was it not raised at that stage and it now becomes a contentious issue? What is the process that's usually followed when negotiating?
Exactly, 100%. Look, at the end of the day, when we're dealing with these kind of contracts, I normally tell people if they want to fight about contracts after the fact, after it has been signed, I simply just say these contracts start off as a Word document. What that simply means is if you don't like a clause in there, you can ask that it be removed. There isn't something that comes and says, this is the standard contract, take it or leave it. And even in that specific case, you can either take it or you can leave it. You know, these are just negotiation points. I believe if they are fighting now about the fact that this buyback clause is not in their best interest, they did not negotiate the contract properly. That is just my opinion on it.
Well, quite clear. So you believe no leg to stand on for Moira Tlhagale, should have negotiated better. The other two agents did, right?
Yes, 100%.
So that's where we'll leave it, clear and simple. Thank you so much. Kabelo Mashego, of course, is a sports lawyer and intermediary, just opining on the matters we heard a bit earlier on in the Johannesburg High Court as the battle does continue between Mamelodi Sundowns and MT Sport. Of course, they have adjourned and they will return for closing arguments in that matter.